Welcome back. This is the Press Club. Before the break, we were talking about the elections in Trinidad due on Monday. Race relations, always a factor in Trinidad elections.
And Guyana.
And the question has been asked, is this another case, as you rightly said, of Kamala Persad trying to blacken, I guess, pun unintended.
No pun intended.
Rowley's name and character. Yes, you have heard threats of assassination, but there are also attempts to assassinate his character, starting back in Carnival. You know, race played a factor there. You know, I saw something interesting online.
But he was chipping on an Indian woman?
Well, the Indian was whining on him.
Oh, I see. I see. As against chipping.
And some people argue that's his civic duty, you know, to whine back on her. But there were some questions raised about the timing of the revelations. Somebody online asked the question, did Gums, that's the name of the reporter, the Express reporter, did Gums quit her job or just the cover for her real job? There were also suggestions that she had taken 2 contracts from government ministers or ministries amounting to over $1 million. You know,
That's a rich reporter.
And she had said that her real passion was business. So the question is, did she quit her job as a reporter or just the cover for her real job? Yeah, the question, is this story as fake as it sounds, or it will hurt all women more than one man? The question of race has come up several times. They asked, going back to 1961 and 62 general elections, a wave of hysteria swept through St. Joseph's Convent one day with the cry that black men were coming to rape girls at the school. Where it originated from, nobody knows. There's the infamous stance of another minister of parliament, a former minister in parliament, claiming back in the 1980s that the black men were raping Indo-Trini women. That turned out to be a hoax as well, and one that he never apologized for. During the period of the NAR regime, fear of rape by black men was also used as reasons to seek asylum in North America. And Carnival 2015, there was the demonization of Mr. Rowley, as we discussed, as a sexual predator because a young woman of Indian descent chose to dance with him during the annual parade.
Chose to dance with him during the annual parade.
And of course,
that
like
sounds like a very perfumed description of what normally happens at a carnival parade.
But it raises the issue that we have discussed here too about our elections. Do we really want elections based on these kind of tactics?
thank God we're a mixed bag. All of the quotes you made, you quoted there, are from persons who have had to live that race life all their lives. I spent 6 years in Guyana, and even before that I had known some, but I lived it. And unfortunately, even as we speak today, you still have people in Guyana, black people who will tell you the best Indian is a dead one. Indians who will tell you the best black is a dead one. I think the level of pronouncement of the racial differences is sometimes louder in Guyana, although it could be deeper or just as deep in Trinidad and Tobago. And it still plays a part. For example, again, I pointed out Gypsy, that we're looking at Gypsy. Who are the 2 main former Kamala cabinet ministers who are being focused on? The controversial Warner, Jack Warner, he's black. And Gypsy, he's black. The PNM in a black versus Indian election, the last I heard, was not that the PNM could win, but that it was only 1% behind. You know, the pollsters were very careful in how they put it across. So I think in that, in such a tight race, the politicians then who drive the agenda and not the press, because we still quote the politicians, we don't put the words in their mouths. The politicians are able, in any reality of a close fight, means this party interprets a close fight as, listen, we go lose. You know, we'll lose all of the investment we've made. We'll end up in opposition, or we'll remain in opposition. So the proclivity there is to find the easiest thing to move people. And race does.
Race, yeah.
It does it in Trinidad, it does it in Guyana, it does it to a certain extent, which we don't know much about, but on a wider scale in Suriname as well.
Which begs the question, would you suggest that that is perhaps accounting for Kamala Persaud's continued popularity in spite of the fact that she has claimed to have restored Trinidad's economic stability? Yet the
I think
figures revealed on Friday,
but
the figures revealed on Friday suggest something else, that the economy has shrunk by, I think, 1.2%, and unemployment has risen in Trinidad and Tobago.
I think people will continue to vote race in both Trinidad and Guyana, irrespective of whether they say so or whether we see it that way. In both of those countries, there's an Indian majority, and the parties, you find more cases of the Indian parties trying to woo blacks than cases of blacks trying to woo Indians, so that particularly when the Indian party is in office or you have an Indian leader. Let's look at Kamala. What are the things we've been hearing of her of late, which are not new? One, that they found marijuana in her residence, her compound at her home. They found a marijuana tree. And secondly, that she's drinking a lot. She's alcoholic. Now, I've always heard those two things. I also know that marijuana was found at George Washington, the first president, planted marijuana. It's part of the American history. Google it, George Washington and marijuana. So that if you find a marijuana plant in the vast compound where she lives today, you still find that being referred to by Jack Warner, who was the Minister of National Security at the time, and kept it quiet. But, politics is coming up, and he's suggesting that it was more than just a plant. It's about more than just a plant. Similarly, ever since Kamala got to be Prime Minister, there has been references to her drinking. It died off. I'm not sure she had said to anybody that she had stopped drinking, but I guess there was no capital to be gained out of raising it. But with the election when is it, Monday?
Monday.
Yeah, with the election there on Monday, you see between now and Monday, it's mass in Trinidad.
Yeah, but the real battle, I think, is over the undecided voters right now.
As always.
As Kamala has said.
In a close fight.
Yeah, and I think despite the controversy that has plagued her government, I think she has proven herself to be strong, to be smart, to be very decisive, and I think that might also contribute to her continued popularity in spite of the economic situation and the crime situation in Trinidad, which are obvious key points in the election campaign.
She's a lawyer.
Yeah, and while we are
she's
not
a good lawyer, she had a good teacher.
While we are not racially divided, the division along
parties and color lines that is
exists still here.
That is what exists.
And I want us to raise an old topic: debates. Let us move away from the character assassination as we're discussing here, happening in Trinidad and Tobago, because there's very little discussion about the real issues.
To what extent are we prepared? Because people are disgusted. You listen to people calling the talk shows, and they complain. They really want to discuss issues. But to what extent are Caribbean politicians, we're talking about St. Lucia, but the debate issue is a Caribbean problem because we don't have the cross-party debate across CARICOM.
Right.
Okay? Trinidad, fine example. It took about 3 months, arguing over when and how to have a debate between the two major parties, but it was very clear from day one that neither side wanted to, because they were each making it impossible for they were making demands that they know the other one would not accept. In the case of St. Lucia, The Voice recently, a couple months ago, in an editorial called for return of town hall debates, and that was happening at a time when WVent had started these town hall debates around the country. I think the media can play that role. We can invite, you know, if we leave it to the parties to arrange debates they want, we can invite. Now, how do we go about it? If you just pick up the phone and you call Alan Shastner and Kenny Anthony and say, we'd like to have you on Newsmaker Live Wednesday, dead on arrival.
That's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. But if you suggest to them that maybe we could do it by phone, there may be a response, because I'm not sure the two guys want to sit next to each other in a studio, although I don't see anything wrong with that. But I think they would be less hostile to an interview conducted technologically, you know, where we say, all right, we speak to you, we stay in the studio and we speak to you by phone. You'll hear what he says, you know, etc.
Via Skype.
Or via Skype. Or pre-recorded. You know, it depends on how we approach the issue, because you ask each of those aforementioned politicians about the value of a debate, and they will both tell you it's absolutely necessary and important. But it will be an admission that is going to die there, because neither is going to say, okay, let's have a series of debates leading up to the elections, one every month, and then coming into one every week. It is not something that the party supporters of the respective parties will be pushing their leaders into. So you have a situation where the leaders are unwilling, the supporters are unable to push them in that direction, and therefore the role is left to us in the press to sort of put the issue out there and start to popularize it and get people to understand the importance of the debate. We can refer to the U.S. presidential debates. We can refer to the fun the U.S. press is having with Donald Trump. You know, you and I would know that every presidential election, there is a loose cannon in the race. You had Ross Perot, Sarah Palin, you know, they rise up, and as the date gets closer, Republicans and Democrats get closer to who they really want. I think that in promoting the debates, if we do it, for example, you start at the level of a UWP and SLP town hall debate in the town hall, but not between the two leaders, but between the two parties. Tell them choose who they send. You know, and we start at that level. So maybe the youth arms can debate, the women's arms can debate, you know, then the party, the constituencies could carry that debate at a constituency level. So eventually you would have Pep and our colleague, former colleague, Dominic. So you'd have maybe Pep and Dominic in a town hall debate in Ancillary, in a town hall debate in Canaries before the election, dealing with local issues and what they are bringing to the table. I think it is the sort of thing that can be promoted, and we have a rural, we have a rural thing. The rural part of us, more than our interest in issues, will see people draft into such a thing, and it would be up to the debaters to understand that, listen, we have the people here. To what extent do I just beat my own party drum, or that I show people we can change? Because the whole idea is for change. But how ready are we when politicians today would still engage in traditional approaches, you know, of everything from this one calling that one, describing that one in ways, opposition opposing for opposing sake, government ruling because we are the ruling party, politicians appearing to be crying about learning that there are poor people in St. Lucia. On the other hand, responses to that not addressing the issue, but as to whether he was lying or not. Can you cry without water in your eye? You know, there has to be a clear indication that our politicians are prepared to make that qualitative change. And the discussion, you and I have admitted that, the discussion on the Constitution in both houses of Parliament showed that there is the possibility that members on different sides could have common views on issues affecting the country. And that you looked at issues where UWP, SLP, and Independent, if you could call Frederick that, have all had the same positions, on the same issue relating to whether elected MPs should resign before accepting cabinet posts. There were also other issues where we were hearing the opposition was saying to the government, hello, we need to do this. You need to look at that this way. I didn't hear anybody quarreling and cussing out. The only slight thing was one guy tried to read his entire presentation and was told not to. But that debate, I think anybody who watched any or all of them would have some encouraging feeling that it can happen. And if we were to build on that into bipartisanism, where the government and opposition parliamentarians would agree to work together on issues like they have now agreed to work on the Constitutional Reform Commission, because the next step is the MPs are going to come together and decide whether they will set up a parliamentary subcommittee representing with both sides, or whether they are going to form a wider national subcommittee that includes civil society, it's a non-parliamentarian members. But I have heard none say that's nonsense. You know the usual thing that whenever government puts something forward, it is considered as coming from the government, the ruling party of the day, and it is traditionally opposed because it's the norm to oppose anything governments present. I think we've shown we can move out of that, and if we take and make use of these slight openings, we can start to see less reluctance to consider public debates as part of the political process, and not only at elections, but between elections. For example, I think we need a halfway term kind of a something. It is being proposed that politicians be reviewed halfway through their term. I don't agree with the mechanism for the right of recall, which is being proposed, which is that 25% of the electorate can recall an MP halfway through. But I think the halfway through, like in the United States, you have a midterm election which assesses how you've been doing halfway through. That is going to help everybody. It's going to help the ruling party to examine how people feel about its performance. It's going to help the opposition equally to examine how people feel about it as an alternative, and it would basically give the electorate a chance to express a position. But my view is that if you're elected for 5 years, you're elected for 5 years. Our constitutional already says how you can be removed, and what you can be removed for. But I don't think St. Lucians will agree to remove an MP they voted for 5 years halfway through because of something called failure to do constituency work. So it's a general...
I think you might be surprised. We do for a break, last one, and then we'll be right back to continue our discussion. I want us to talk a little bit about the media before we end.